Netherlands, France, Greece. Which of the 27 remaining states will follow in Britain's footsteps? By the looks of it, none of them. If anything, Brexit. That's the 2020 British exit from the European Union that caused an uproar in Europe's socio-political dynamics, serves as a stark example of why it's in their best interest to stay a part of the coalition. But Britain had its reasons for leaving the EU, chiefly sovereignty, immigration, and economic reasons. The question isn't why the United Kingdom went through with leaving the EU. Rather, how has it fared since the exit? And why hasn't any other member nation followed suit? This leads to the question, was Brexit a mistake? For context, a 2024 poll by Statista Research showed that 55% of the population believed that Brexit was the wrong move. So, if the British aren't happy about it, why should other countries stage an EU exit of their own? The European Union saw its largest enlargement in 2002, when the A10, that's 10 European states, pledged to join the bloc. Several of these nations were formerly a part of the Eastern Bloc. The A10 included Poland, Slovakia, Slovenia, and the Czech Republic, amongst several others. A major concern of the EU15 was free movement, and several existing members placed restrictions on every member of the A10, save for Cyprus. This, of course, caused commotion in the A10, well, A9 in this case, and they wanted some reassurances of their own. Hence, Article 50. That's an amendment to the Treaty of the European Union that provides for the possibility of a member state leaving the EU, given a number of considerations are made. Before the Treaty of Lisbon in 2009 and Article 50 became a part of the EU Constitution, member states could technically still voluntarily withdraw from the coalition. There just wasn't a specific article outlining such a move. Interestingly, it was a former British diplomat, Lord Kerr of Kinlochard, who drafted the article. None of the A10 members moved for a withdrawal, but in 2016, the United Kingdom held a referendum to decide its future in the EU. David Cameron pushed for the referendum, believing that the British public would agree with his viewpoint, that was to stay within the coalition. Let's just say that the former Prime Minister withdrew from premiership the day the results were announced. Thus, Article 50 was invoked. As part of the terms of withdrawal, the UK had to announce its decision to leave the EU and negotiate terms of its exit. Of course, the UK reserved the right to unilaterally exit the coalition without settling with the terms outlined by the coalition. However, given how several politicians believed that the EU would serve as a customer for Great Britain now that it had exited the single market, it was imperative that they reach some sort of an agreement. And they did, the terms of which continued until the United Kingdom's official exit from the bloc in 2020. Was it as smooth of an exit as everyone had hoped? Not necessarily. Gina Miller, a British businesswoman, for example, sued the British government following Brexit. There was also the infamous Brexit divorce bill, which amounted to £37.8, according to the British government's estimate in 2019, settled and non-settled special status for EU member nationalities who migrated to the United Kingdom. Plus, several other considerations or terms following Britain's decision to invoke Article 50. Despite it all, Brexit happened. The United Kingdom became the first, and so far, the only former member state to invoke Article 50. And now, why didn't this spark renewed interest in withdrawing from the coalition in any other of the member states? Euroscepticism is very real and very prevalent. The British weren't the only people unhappy with the European Union. There were the Dutch, the French, and the Greeks too. Why didn't they leave? Even when at one point it seemed like they were almost about to. Did you know that Daniel van der Stoep, a former member of the Party for Freedom, started the political party Article 50 in the Netherlands? The party was founded in 2012. That was a few years before Brexit had taken place, and just a few years after Article 50 was introduced into the European Union Charter. Was this a coincidence? No, of course not. While Article 50 didn't fare well in the Dutch political landscape, it managed to win one municipal seat, with the promise of laying out a framework that would stop the construction of a mosque. The party was eventually dissolved in 2015 when van der Stoep stepped down and Article 50 was absorbed into another Eurosceptic political party for the Netherlands. But let's talk about Party for Freedom for a minute. Also, a Eurosceptic political campaign whose leader, Geert Wilders, has publicly disclosed his unappreciation for the European Union. As part of the Dutch coalition government, Geert has once claimed that he would make sure that Nexit becomes a reality. Here we have someone who's called for Netherlands' exit from the bloc several times over. Yet in June 2024, Wilders withdrew that decision and instead announced he planned on reaching new settlements with the European Union. The question is, why the switch-up? Viktor Orban, the Hungarian Prime Minister, voiced his support for Wilders the day his party won a majority of the seats in the House of Representatives. Both politicians are right-leaning, and in his speech, Orban claimed that it was their duty to fix the EU from within. Again, Wilders was a staunch supporter of the Grexit campaign, and now that the PVV has won a majority for the first time, he could actually go through with it, but has decided not to. Why? For one, it would have been very isolating for the Netherlands. As overly simplistic as this may sound, the EU provides its member states with benefits unlike any other, namely the single market and the EU budget. While Wilders advocated for Grexit, 80% of the Dutch did not. That's above the EU member average of 72%. Grexit has been a slogan for the PVV for years now. However, after Brexit, and with the fallout that ensued, Wilders, as well as the Dutch public, have decided that while reforms are surely necessary and possibly believe that the EU needs to fall in line with its conservative ideologies, at least that's what Orban claimed, leaving the coalition outright would be the wrong move. Did you know that in June 2016, before the Brexit referendum took place, Pew Research Center held a poll to determine which percentage of the EU member populations wanted to invoke Article 50? Let's start with polling results in the United Kingdom, the only country to have actually gone through with it, 48%. Now, two of the countries with the largest population that held an unfavorable view of the coalition are France and Greece. Of the French population surveyed, 61% had an unfavorable view, while 33% were adamant that the only solution was to leave the EU. In Greece, the numbers were 71% when asked if they had an unfavorable opinion of the bloc, and over 50% believed that it would be in Greece's best interest to leave the EU. Then why did Frexit never happen? For that, we'd have to ask Madame Frexit herself, Marion-Anne Perrine Le Pen, or Marine Le Pen, a prominent figure in French politics who's been a vocal advocate for France's exit from the European Union. As the leader of the National Rally, Madame Frexit has claimed that France's membership in the coalition is a threat to French sovereignty, something that was of utmost importance to Boris Johnson when he moved for Brexit to take place, criticizing his predecessor, Theresa May, for not being swift enough. In 2017, that was a year after the British referendum had taken place, Le Pen pushed for Frexit once again and gained a stronghold among the masses during her presidential campaign. Along with sovereignty, Le Pen argued that the EU placed regulations and restrictions that stifled economic growth and compromised France's national security. If elected, Le Pen claimed that she would make sure that Frexit became a reality. Then why hasn't it happened? Le Pen had a massive following because, as it turned out, Euroscepticism was gaining momentum in France. Yet, that sizable portion of the French population did not make up the majority. In fact, the majority banded behind Emmanuel Macron, a staunch pro-EU candidate who ultimately beat Le Pen for the presidency. Le Pen's defeat caused a shift in her own rhetoric and strategies. Now, she argued that a full exit from the EU, something she'd previously advocated for, would not be in the best interest of France. Instead, she believed that changes could be made from within the coalition. In all fairness, France has always been a key player in European politics and has always been a major member of the bloc. 2019 was a better year for Le Pen's national rally, proving that while Euroscepticism was still prevalent in France, the people didn't necessarily want France to leave the EU, which provided significant benefits. For example, Le Pen had previously criticized the open borders or free movement policy of the coalition, yet it served the French people greatly too. In her op-ed, Sylvie Kaufmann claimed that a major reason why Madame Frexit's campaign didn't sway the majority and why she ultimately had to recuperate and reinvent herself as simply Le Pen was because Brexit had shown the masses that Frexit wouldn't be in their best interests. It all came to a head during the 2017 televised debate between Le Pen and Macron, actually. When Le Pen presented her Frexit strategies and restated over and over again that it was the right move. Meanwhile, Macron's counter-argument left her speechless. According to Kaufmann, Le Pen had to take 2 years to think about her policies herself, and by the 2019 campaign, admitted that it was the wrong thing to advocate for. And now, the country that polled the highest numbers of people with an unfavorable view of the European Union, Greece. Understanding that an overwhelming majority wasn't in favor of the country's membership in the coalition, How come Grexit never came to be? The answer would be Brexit, rather than the fallout after Brexit that cautioned the Greeks from leaving the coalition just the same. Grexit was a hypothetical scenario that came into effect in the mid-2010s, mostly surrounding the Greek government debt crisis. Those who supported Grexit argued that leaving the EU, and consequently the euro, allowing for the reintroduction of the drachma, would boost exports and tourism, discourage imports, and would essentially reinvent the Greek economy, giving it a fighting chance. Those who disagreed claimed that the proposal would lead to troubling times for the Greek people, and the short-term effects would be a significant consumption and wealth reduction. Grexit nearly caused civil unrest in Greece and harm to its reputation in the Eurozone. So, why didn't Grexit happen? Actually, why didn't Nexit or Frexit happen either, when it seemed like there was a growing crowd of Euroskeptics and people who believed that leaving the EU was the only solution for the nation's prosperity? In a word, Brexit. Most of these movements, including Grexit, the strongest one yet, gained momentum in the days before Brexit officially took place, drawing on inspiration from the British, who took the step, and giving politicians who advocated leaving the EU more ground to stand on when doing the same for their nations. Or so they thought. Grexit, or any other EU member exit, wouldn't be a one-day process. Indeed, even Brexit took 4 years to actually happen. Strategically, being part of a large political and economic bloc amplifies a country's influence on the global stage. The UK's diminished influence post-Brexit has prompted other countries to reflect on the potential loss of bargaining power. Economically, the EU provides substantial benefits, including free movement of goods, services, capital, and people, which boosts growth and stability. The UK's post-Brexit challenges, such as trade barriers and economic instability, serve as a deterrent to other nations. And lastly, politically, the complexities and prolonged negotiations required to leave the EU are daunting. Brexit highlighted the difficulties of disentangling from the EU, causing other countries to recognize the potential for political instability. The EU's willingness to address member concerns also reduces the desire to leave. Should Britain revise its exit as well and rejoin the European Union?